Most people think they know what's happening with Canada's fighter jet program. They think it's simple. Another government, another expensive defense contract, another routine purchase from the United States. But while Washington still assumes Canada will stay a loyal F-35 customer forever, something very different has been unfolding behind closed doors. Quiet meetings, no press briefings, no headlines, just discreet flights, private negotiations, and conversations that aren't meant to be heard. At Saab headquarters in Sweden, Canada's Minister of Industry didn't show up to admire Scandinavian architecture. She came to discuss something far bigger than buying jets. Something that could redraw North America's defense industry map. Because the real question isn't whether Canada needs fighter aircraft. The real question is where Canada wants to build them, who controls them, and how uncomfortable that makes Washington. And to understand why this moment matters so much, you have to go back to a decision Canada made 65 years ago, one that erased an entire industry overnight. For decades, Canada played a familiar role. Buy American aircraft, use American software, depend on American maintenance systems. It worked until it didn't. The F-35 program was sold as inevitable, advanced, stealthy, alliance-friendly. But over time, frustration quietly set in. Costs climbed without clear explanations. Maintenance schedules became locked behind proprietary systems. Even minor upgrades required external approval. At first, the number was around $19 billion for 88 aircraft. Then it jumped. $28 billion. Still not final. Analysts now estimate lifetime costs could exceed $70 billion once maintenance, software updates, and long-term logistics are factored in. And that's the part that started bothering Ottawa. Because every operational decision flowed through Washington. Every update depended on Lockheed Martin's supply chain. Every change required permission. What looked like a purchase increasingly felt like a lease. Canada wasn't trying to pick a fight. It was trying to avoid being boxed into a corner. And that's when another option quietly appeared. Not as a replacement ally, but as something far more dangerous to the status quo. A partner. Sweden doesn't think like a superpower, and that's exactly why Canada started listening. Small population, massive territory, Arctic conditions, a long-standing belief that relying too heavily on anyone else is a risk. Sweden built its defense industry around independence, not dominance. The Gripen reflects that mindset. It's designed to operate from short runways, to be serviced quickly, to function without constant external authorization. It prioritizes flexibility over perfection and autonomy over prestige. But Saab's real pitch wasn't about performance charts. It was about control. Instead of saying, buy our aircraft, Saab said something far more disruptive. Build it yourself. Domestic assembly. Technology transfer. Industrial participation. Long-term manufacturing rights. Not ownership in name only, but real capability. And Saab didn't come alone. They brought a familiar Canadian name back into the conversation. One that hadn't touched military aircraft in decades. Bombardier once stood at the top of global aerospace manufacturing. Then came setbacks, delays, projects that went over budget, programs that never reached production. Commercial aviation nearly broke the company. So when reports surfaced that Saab wanted Bombardier as its manufacturing partner, many analysts were skeptical. Military aircraft are a different beast. Stricter tolerances, security clearances, zero failure margins. A mistake in commercial aviation delays a flight. A mistake in defense aviation costs lives. But Bombardier still had something no startup could replicate. Existing infrastructure, a skilled workforce base, and decades of aerospace experience waiting to be redirected. That's why the meeting stayed quiet. Industry Minister Melanie Joly travels to Sweden. Ontario's economic leadership follows weeks later. No press conferences, no photo ops. Negotiations move straight into deep territory. Production structures, technology access, profit sharing, long-term commitments. This wasn't exploratory. This was structural. And suddenly, defense analysts weren't the only ones paying attention. Washington noticed too. But the urgency didn't come from Ottawa or Stockholm. It came from a war zone. In late 2025, reports claimed Ukraine was preparing to acquire between 100 and 150 Gripen fighters. That number wasn't symbolic. It was survival math. The problem? Saab can only produce around 15 to 20 aircraft per year at its existing facilities. At that rate, delivery would take nearly a decade. Ukraine doesn't have a decade. Saab needed capacity fast, but not just anywhere. They needed a partner outside active conflict zones, a nation with advanced aerospace infrastructure, a government aligned with Western defense priorities, but not locked into a single supply chain. Canada checked every box. Suddenly, Canada wasn't just a buyer, it was the bottleneck solution. Bombardier's manufacturing expertise, Canada's composite materials industry, precision avionics suppliers, Arctic-ready testing environments. The pieces fit almost too well, but just as the plans started looking inevitable, a critical vulnerability surfaced, one that could freeze everything overnight. The Gripen E runs on the GE F414 engine, and GE is American. That single fact changes everything, because no matter where the aircraft is assembled, no matter how much technology is transferred, the engine remains subject to U.S. export controls. This is the pressure point. Washington doesn't need to block Canada from buying Gripens. It doesn't even need to object publicly. All it has to do is delay engine approvals, or deny them, and suddenly a fully funded Canadian production line becomes a billion-dollar warehouse of unfinished aircraft. In the current climate, trade disputes, tariff threats, defense industry protectionism, this risk isn't hypothetical. It's structural. Reports suggest this issue is being discussed behind closed doors. No official statements, no confirmations, just contingency planning. Because Canada has seen this movie before, and it didn't end well. In 1959, Canada had one of the most advanced aircraft on Earth. The Avro Aero could fly higher, faster, and farther than anything its rivals had deployed. Aviation experts across multiple countries acknowledged it wasn't just competitive, it was ahead. And one morning, the program was canceled. No phase out, no transition, just termination. 50,000 workers lost their jobs. Engineers scattered across borders. Many ended up in the United States, contributing to NASA programs that would later put humans on the moon. Canada didn't just lose an aircraft. It lost belief. Over the next 6 decades, the country slowly accepted that building complex. Military aircraft was something other nations did. Canada would buy instead, depend instead, adjust instead. That mindset shaped generations. And now, 65 years later, the opportunity to reverse it has quietly returned. But this time, the stakes are just as high. Optimism doesn't erase risk. Bombardier's recent history is complicated. The C-Series nearly collapsed under its own weight before being absorbed by Airbus. The Learjet 85 burned through over $1 billion and never reached production. Defense aviation demands patience, precision, and political backing that lasts longer than election cycles. Entire supply chains would need rebuilding, secure facilities constructed, thousands of workers retrained, billions invested long before the first aircraft leaves the hangar. Provinces are already competing. Ontario and Quebec are drafting incentive packages, loan guarantees, tax credits, workforce programs. Universities and technical colleges are quietly launching aerospace defense curricula. These aren't emergency measures, they're preparation. Meanwhile, the Royal Canadian Air Force has begun internal assessments on operating a mixed fleet. F-35s for NATO missions, Gripens for sovereignty patrols, Arctic surveillance and domestic defense, not replacement, diversification. And that distinction changes everything. This isn't about which jet is better. It's about whether Canada wants permission or control. A limited F-35 fleet keeps alliance commitments intact. A domestically produced Gripen fleet restores autonomy. Together, they signal something new. Canada isn't rejecting partnerships. It's redefining them. And while no official announcement has been made, insiders claim joint venture discussions are nearing completion. Late 2025, early 2026. The delay isn't technical, it's political. Once this becomes public, it can't be undone. There won't be a dramatic declaration. No flag-waving announcement. No victory speech. Just a quiet shift that changes everything. From buyer to builder, from dependence to choice, from asking permission to setting direction. The road ahead is risky. Financial pressure, geopolitical tension, and industrial challenges remain real. But momentum doesn't lie. For the first time in decades, Canada isn't asking Washington what it's allowed to do. It's asking itself what it wants to become. And this time, the world is paying attention.